IU football is back, and it's another week of Pack the Rock. I am your host, Dylan Traeger, joined by expert panelists Liv Clements from Hoosier Network and Matt Press from IDS. Let's get right into it. Matt, what do you think went well during the IU-OSU game? What'd you like, what'd you not like?
Well, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Defense, undeniably. You can point to Matt Guerrieri coming in, taking over play calling duties. That was something that went pretty well. He talked about communication going really well. And then outside of coaching, personnel looked really good. That was a big question mark at the start of this season. It was kind of a question in the secondary, just in terms of packages and who they would put out. But I think you can say Nick Toomer, Kobe Minor, Jameer Johnson, those were guys that really stuck out against, some of the best receivers in the country, Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., so on. And, at each level of the defense, you saw positives. Andre Carter on the D-line, transfer from Western Michigan this offseason, was my pick to win team MVP this season. He looked really good. Couple tackles for loss, which led the game. He was constantly in the backfield, eating up double teams. And then still in the front seven, you had Aaron Casey, obviously leader of the team, looked really good. And then next to him, Jacob Mangum-Farrar in that kind of will spot also looked really good. He had a couple pass breakups, was flying around the field. So positive takeaways, I think defense undeniably was my favorite.
And I'm going to ask you this. You look at Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best receivers, you could say, in the Big Ten or the entire NCAA. Who do you credit for his decreased game? 2 receptions for about 20 yards. Who do you credit on that?
It's you want to credit the secondary as much as you can, but as good as they played, I think you still have to say Ohio State's game plan was a little flawed, just in terms of not getting those guys the ball enough, because it's not that they were just totally blanketed. They just weren't targeting them on the outside that much. So I think they probably could have seen a lot more success had they have looked to the perimeter more, instead of kind of seemingly playing with IU's game plan of grounding and pounding the whole game. But I think it's equal parts flawed game plan with just a really good showing from the secondary.
I definitely agree. I feel like you mentioned, Nicholas Toomer coming from Stanford, I feel like really did what he was supposed to do. But if it wasn't for him and Aaron Casey, I don't really know what would have happened, because defense for IU was key. And them doing that had OSU stayed at 23. But I do think that the defense was a notable watch. I don't think the score was bad. I think Hoosier fans should be happy with it, because it could have went way worse. But I think with the new team, the transfers coming in, like you said, with the personnel and everything, I feel like it went fine.
Yeah, I'm looking at Philip Dunham. He's a sophomore. He had the 1 interception in the game. A guy who really didn't stand out to me. I don't know if he stood out to you guys last season. I think he really built a name there for himself. The defense really surprised me. I didn't think we had much of a defense going into this, and that kind of levels it off for how bad our offense was, and we can trash that completely. I thought their offense was horrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in any way. No guy looked like he was a Big Ten player out there. The quarterbacks looked disgusting. What do you guys think Tom Allen's going to look to do in this next game?
So, before getting into the offense, I did want to note on Philip Dunham, a guy that, you're right, didn't really stand out a lot last year. But we heard from Tom Allen, Guerrieri on Monday, and some other players who have said he's been really, really strong in camp. They said he's made that exact interception 50 times in camp so far. So that's a guy definitely breakout candidate this year. But offense, I think against an inferior opponent like Indiana State, you're just looking for someone to look comfortable under center, which, not that Sorsby or Taven Jackson really had the chance to do against Ohio State in terms of opening up the playbook and really throwing downfield at all. I think right now you're just looking for someone to look comfortable throwing the ball.
I think that Taven and Sorsby both had opportunity offensively. It was just the fact that, you look on the field and you said, it looked like there was a high school team out there. Receivers are kind of just standing there, or no one looked like they were on the same page. There was no flow, there was no rhythm. You look at OSU as that's a strict play. We can read the play, we see what they're gonna do. But the defense for IU could see what they were gonna do. But then it was almost for IU, it was just let's just see what happens. And I feel that's why it was just a hot mess off gate with both of them. And I do think when Tom Allen said in the press conference that he plans to do the same thing with the quarterbacks for ISU, where it was like maybe go back and forth, give them equal playing time. I'm almost like, let's just pick one and let's just go with it. Because with ISU, like everyone's expecting IU to win. But I still think don't leave leeway for mess ups. Like, don't leave leeway. This isn't practice. This isn't just like fall camp still. So I feel like it's important for them to just pick one and go with it, because if they do the same offense that they did last game, it will still be a hot mess, I feel like.
You know, I agree with what you're saying, and I feel like they had all of summer camp to take note of who's the better quarterback here. Sorsby, who really got no playing time last year, and then you've got Taven Jackson, a 4-star from Tennessee. You look at the game, and Taven looked terrible. I'm not saying Sorsby looked good, but he did control the game for most of the game when he was playing. I think you got to start Sorsby against Indiana State and let it roll. Obviously, this is a game we're favored by 30 points. We're going to win it in blowout fashion. Once you get a comfortable lead, I think you put in Jackson and see what he can do. But I think you should be relying on Sorsby to see what he can do in terms of the rest of the season. You know, this isn't a practice run anymore. We have all these Big Ten games coming up. We have Louisville in 2 weeks at Lucas Oil. There's big games we got to be ready for.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. And I think you have to think also, like, I think there was so much hype for Taven. Like, everyone was like, we're ready, it's him. Of course, there was some with, like, Trace being his brother. But I think, like, everyone was expecting him to come and change the program. And that's just not what's going to happen if you don't have equal amount of talent on both sides. I'm not saying Taven's bad, which I don't think any of us are saying. I just think that, like, you can't expect him to come in and just go crazy, and with such a new team with all those transfers. There's going to be, you have to figure out a rhythm as a team, and I just don't feel like they looked like a team at all. But then, like you said, with so important games coming up, like at Lucas Oil, Rutgers is homecoming, they end with Purdue. Like, it's not going to be, they're not going to have a chance of like, okay, maybe do this, maybe do this. But I do think it's smart to start Sorsby. I feel like that would be the plan.
And you could say this is all hindsight, but it does go into roster construction with last season. We know Bazelak wasn't really the answer, but he was an experienced guy who was accomplished in the SEC. I think it was just interesting to see them not bring in anyone for competition that was experienced, because right now, even after the Ohio State game, there's still unknowns at quarterback. And I'm glad you mentioned the Louisville game. I think, and what you want to see this Friday is kind of a barometer for who's going to start that game, because playing against Louisville, Ohio State's kind of in a different stratosphere. That's kind of where you're going to see where you are as a team in week 3. So Tom Allen said he's going with Jackson to start. We can assume these Sorsby will be in second quarter, maybe at the latest. They're going to be rotating constantly. But, I mean, we still just don't know what these guys are. I mean, Walt Bell on Monday said he thinks both of them are NFL caliber guys, which make of that what you will. But we just don't know right now. I think both are talented, both are physical, both definitely have strong arms. We don't know really how accurate they are, how good their anticipation is right now. But just getting those reps, we'll see them on Friday, hopefully have an answer there.
You know, I hate to kind of shit on the team. Excuse my language. I hate to say this, but like, you look at the team last year, they go into the season with I'd say a better team this year. Bazelak, who's an experienced quarterback, they took him out of the starting lineup and they put Tuttle in, and they had Sorsby getting runs, and they had Dexter, was that his name?
Dexter Williams.
The Dexter Williams getting runs. They had 4 different quarterbacks playing in games. You would think they'd get learning experience from that to determine a starting quarterback for this year. I feel like the management is so unorganized with this, not knowing who your starting quarterback is in Big Ten football. This isn't high school football. This isn't Pee Wee football. They got to figure out who their quarterback is. And this Indiana State game is definitely a must-win rolling into these non-conference games. You know, looking at this game at Lucas Oil, looking at the game against Akron. These are games you got to win before Big Ten play. Because knowing Indiana, they're not going to be winning many of these Big Ten games. I don't know what you guys think.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think, like you said, like, get the kinks out now, ISU, Akron. But it's not going to be time to put new quarterbacks in and back quarterbacks when they play Michigan. Let's get those out now. But then, like you said, though, like, there's no point to be saying this team shouldn't be as bad as everyone's saying, because you have transfers coming in, not from small schools, not JUCO. There are, like, E.J. Williams come from Clemson that actually played, got good playing time from it. You have Kobe Minor come from Texas Tech. And like you said, Nicholas Toomer coming from Stanford. Those aren't bad schools to be playing football, and they all got equal playing time there, and they're getting equal playing time here. I think it just says a lot with coaching staff management that they're not shining here like they were, and that's why they got recruited to come here. And I don't think that first game did them justice, but it could have if there was a better game plan going into it, if that makes sense.
To be a little bit of the voice of optimism, because we are kind of, I feel like we're pretty negative right now, and I don't know if it's all warranted. I will say an area I was thoroughly impressed with was the O-line. There were some plays where the left side kind of caved in a little bit, but I mean, against an Ohio State front seven that's really strong, probably the best linebacker in the country, Tommy Eichenberg. I think with Matt Bedford kicking inside, he's been positionally versatile basically his entire career here, but that was impressive. Khalil Benson played really well. And then Zach Carpenter at center from Michigan before last season. I think that's the guy that's really your anchor at this point. He looked really strong, I think. So I do want to credit the O-line. Bob Bostad's done a good job this camp with them. And then the skill position guys just didn't really have enough opportunity. We know Jalen Lucas can play. Christian Turner did look good running downhill. Josh Henderson with that kind of three-headed rushing attack. And then Cam Camper said he's fully healthy. So hopefully he gets some more opportunities coming up. You mentioned E.J. Williams. I mean, you have just a load of slot guys, DeKeese Carter, Anderson Kobe. You just have kind of a stable of guys that we know can play, just need the opportunities. So that's kind of, I think, a couple reasons maybe to be optimistic moving forward.
No, I totally agree. And I think staying on the optimism train, looking at next week's game, which is tomorrow now, I think this is a good game to turn it around. Obviously, Indiana State just lost 27-0 to Eastern Illinois. I mean, that's a battle of two very bad teams. And now you're putting a Big Ten team against Indiana State, who were 6-0 against all time. I think this is a game that I'm looking forward to the most out of this entire season, seeing what our team can do. I'd like to see both quarterbacks get good runs in. I think they can both play above our standards. But I think this is a very winnable game. I'd like to see us win it by at least 3 or 4 scores. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think that this will be a super fun game, and I think it gives them the opportunity to really have fun with it. Like, let the stars that came in be stars of notable players. Like you said, have both quarterbacks show potential and give them equal playing time. I don't think it will be something where they need to battle for it technically. I saw that they both said, like, they're best mates, they're friends. It's not really a battle. They're going to do best fits for the team. So I feel like that'll be good. I think the ISU game will be the potential, and Akron too. I think those could be both good games to have fun with it, see what plays work, what doesn't work, what works best with this quarterback, with this receiver. Defensively, I feel like they'll be fine though either way. I feel like the defense really showed that OSU that they're strong and they don't really need to change too much unless it's still just to get comfortable. But I really am most excited for that Louisville game. I think the Louisville game and Lucas Oil will really just bring the energy, and it gives them a sense of like, oh, I can be here in the NFL. Like, this might be my stadium. Like, I feel like that gives them a sense of like a little more fun. So I feel like the Louisville game will be the most fun game.
Yeah, I think definitely, like I said earlier, about how important that Louisville game is in terms of determining where you are as a team and hopefully where your quarterbacks are at. And then as for the Indiana State game, which is now tomorrow, or whenever this will be releasing, Friday night, the main storyline, I guess, there, Kurt Mallory, head coach, Indiana State, son of legendary Indiana coach Bill Mallory. So Tom Allen talked about that a little bit, said they'll have a good moment pregame, and just has a ton of respect for the Mallory family, of course. As for the actual play, I mean, should be 20 to 30 point win for Indiana, if I'm going to guess. But like you mentioned, just ironing out quarterback situation, hopefully maybe seeing some more chunk plays, more explosive plays on the offense, which is probably going to be the main thing to watch.
I'll toss this one out. Last time they played in 2014, Indiana State, Tevin Coleman, 240 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns from quarterback Nate Sudfeld. Who is your guys' pick to click that could carry on this sort of legacy in our 6-0 run so far against Indiana State?
I'll say Christian Turner has a really big game against Indiana State. I think, has a chance to kind of get into that bell cow role in their backfield. And especially if they go up early and game scripts kind of favorable, maybe you see, 20 carries, 15, 20 carries, and he could just have a monster day, just grinding up the middle. Christian Turner.
Okay, I like the Christian Turner. I like who we mentioned, Jalen Lucas as well. But I honestly feel like, and this guy, I'm just going to put this out there. I want to say, offensively, one of the quarterbacks, that's going to be their star game. And I do think it's going to be Sorsby. I think, offensively, against them, that will be the show of what quarterback has it. And I do think that carries, runs, touchdowns, all of that. I think one quarterback will step up and kind of put themselves out there. And I do think Sorbs will be the one to do it. And I think they'll be surprised offensively. But I think that's what's going to determine like who's going to take that leadership role to do it. So I do think out of all of them, that Sorbs is going to be the one that actually plays that role.
For me, as much as I'm going to rip on Sorsby and Taven Jackson, I'm going to also go Sorsby for tomorrow. I think if we can easily see him throw for at least 200 passing yards against a not-so-good defensive team, I think he can go for 2 or 3 passing touchdowns. Who knows? Maybe even rush for a touchdown. He showed off some of his rushing skills last game. I think Sorsby could do it and cement himself above Taven Jackson. All credit to Taven Jackson. I think he's got a long way to go.
I mean, if you base it off stats, too, I mean, if you look at last game, like, Jackson went 1-5, and then you had Sorsby that went I think it was 8-16. So, and Alan Clint, says that they give him equal time, and I think that equal time is what you can do with it. And I think Sorsby's going to take more of the opportunity to have that equal time. He's been here before. He's played at Memorial. I think he'll take more of an opportunity to kind of excel and do what he needs to do. So that's why I think in these big games, he's going to be the one that steps up because, Taven's new, they're both new, but I do think Sorsby will have that little nudge to get there and be a leader on the team and knows that he needs to score when he needs to score.
And I will say in terms of game plan, especially in the Indiana State game, Tom Allen and Walt Bell did say after the Ohio State game that was not their approach for the entire season. That was solely to kind of keep it competitive against Ohio State. So I think fans should kind of ease up on assuming that's going to be the approach moving forward because they do want to open it up a lot, and that was purely to keep it competitive for 60 minutes like they wanted, which they kind of were successful in. But obviously, in a game like this where you're kind of wanting to show what you have on offense, I think you'll see them opening up, so hopefully we have more answers at quarterback.
And while there's not a lot to say on it, I know the kicker situation wasn't really fixed in until week 1. Matt, I'm curious, what do you think about our current situation with the kicker?
I think it may have been a little bit overblown when some of those first sound bites were coming out about kicker, but it seems like it's going to be Chris Freeman, which I was pretty expected. We knew he was going to handle kickoff duties. It was kind of just a question of who would be handling what yardage on field goals, and he knocked in I want to say it was 42 against Ohio State. So I think it's Chris Freeman's job, which was pretty much to be expected.
So, I mean, I'm hearing you got a little kick in you from your soccer days. You think you can go out there if Freeman can't handle it?
I think you're talking extra points, and I think I have a chance at a 30-yarder right now.
So, IU football, if they're listening in, Matt Press is your guy if there is any injury. Because I've seen you kick a few field goals in my lifetime, and I've those close ones in. You're pretty automatic.
Yeah. Extra points.
We'll be cheering for you.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have anything else to add for today?
I feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think for now, everyone take a deep breath. I think OSU, the score wasn't bad. I think for Hoosier fans, try to stay in the stadium a tad bit longer, give it a little more energy. Leaving at halftime might sulk the team a little bit. So I think fans stay a little longer. We cheer them on. And I think that will come up from here. I think it'll be good.
Also, ban Friday Night Football for college.
Ban Friday Night Football?
7 p.m. on a Friday,
fan.
guys.
I mean,
Come on.
what I didn't think about, which Friday Night Football in college is already kind of an iffy subject, but what Tom Allen brought up that I actually hadn't considered was about bringing recruits out and their families, which now you can't do because they're playing in their own games in high school.
That's a great
So
point.
I think that's something that people should consider. But I am now Team Tom Allen and no Friday night games.
I agree with that. I mean, I get out of class at 4, and I gotta be there pretty much right when I get out of class. I'm gonna be running from class to the stadium, but they're cutting it really close for me. I know you got to be there pretty early. You got class running late tomorrow?
No classes on Fridays.
No class on Friday?
No class on Friday right here, too.
No class on Friday for you too?
No
We
class
take it
on
easy.
Fridays.
Oh wow. I got 3 tomorrow. I really pack it in this semester.
Strictly game days for me on Fridays.
Strictly game days. I like that. I like that. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's what we have for this week on the Pack the Rock podcast. It's IU versus Indiana State, 7 p.m. in Bloomington, Friday night. Dylan Traeger, joined by Liv Clements and Matt Press from the IDS. Thank you for listening this week. We'll be back every Thursday throughout the season.